You awaken not to the gentle chirping of familiar birds, but to the cacophony of a Crusader city stirring to life. The harsh, brilliant Levantine sun, already climbing, stabs through the unglazed window slit or the cracks in the rough wooden door of your rented room, carrying with it the day's heat and a fine, gritty dust. Your lodging is modest, perhaps a small chamber in a bustling inn, or a makeshift dwelling tucked away in a crowded quarter of Acre or Tyre. The air is a vibrant tapestry of sounds, merchants hawking their wares in a dozen tongues: Arabic, French, Italian, Greek, the clatter of hooves and iron shod wheels on stone paved streets, the clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the distant solemn bells of a Christian church vying with the melodic call to prayer, the adhan drifting from a minaret. The early morning air, which might have held a hint of desert coolness, is already surrendering to the encroaching dry heat of the day. Your room itself is simple, perhaps cluttered with the tools of your trade: canvas bags, small wooden chests containing your precious wares, and your own meager personal belongings. It smells of exotic spices, fragrant oils you might use to anoint your relics, well worn leather, and perhaps, if you are near the port, the salty tang of the sea. The first thought that cuts through the remnants of sleep is one of calculation, of strategy. Today's performance. Where will it be? Who are your most promising marks? Which tale will loosen their purse strings most effectively? A familiar knot of anxiety tightens in your gut, the ever present fear of exposure, of being robbed by common cutthroats, or worse, by a rival purveyor of holy artifacts. Yet beneath the anxiety, a current of excitement, of confidence in your persuasive powers, and your repertoire of captivating stories begins to flow. The prospect of a pouch heavy with gold or silver deniers by day's end is a potent motivator. If last night involved a hasty departure from a less than welcoming town, or a long trek along dusty pilgrim roads, a weary ache might linger in your bones. Your morning ablutions are swift and practical. You splash water from an earthenware basin onto your face, the coolness a brief respite from the already oppressive air. You don the attire of a pious pilgrim or a respectable if somewhat travel-worn merchant, a long flowing robe, perhaps of a sober color, and a hood that can lend an air of mystery or simply shield your face from the sun and prying eyes. Then, the careful, almost reverent inspection of your relics. Each fragment of bone, each splinter of wood, each small vial of holy earth, each tattered piece of ancient looking cloth is examined, perhaps given an extra polish or a strategic smudge of dirt to enhance its authenticity. They are arranged with deliberate care in their ornate little boxes or plush velvet bags, ready for display. Breakfast, if you indulge, is a quick, energizing affair. Perhaps some flatbread, a handful of sweet dates, a few salty olives, a chunk of goat cheese, or a bowl of thick porridge, a cup of water, or perhaps some watered down local wine to steady the nerves. The flavors are distinctly Mediterranean: the sweetness of the dates, the briny tang of the olives and cheese. You might eat at a noisy table in the common room of the inn, your ears open for useful gossip, or purchase your meal from a street vendor, your eyes already scanning the passing crowd for potential customers. This meal is not for pleasure, but for fuel, for the long day of performance and persuasion that lies ahead. With your meager breakfast settled, or perhaps skipped entirely in favor of an earlier start, You venture out into the already teeming streets. Your first task is to choose your stage near a prominent church where pilgrims and the devout naturally congregate, or perhaps in the heart of the bustling marketplace amidst the cacophony of commerce where coin flows more freely, or by a city gate to catch the eye of weary travelers arriving with open minds and hopefully open purses. Today, you select a spot near the Church of the Holy Sepulchre if you are in Jerusalem, or a similar focal point in another Crusader city, a place where piety and desperation often walk hand in hand. You unroll a small, somewhat threadbare but clean piece of dark cloth onto the dusty ground, or perhaps onto a rickety folding table you carry with you. Upon this humble altar, you arrange your relics with an air of profound reverence. Each item is unveiled slowly, dramatically, from its protective wrapping. A sliver of blackened wood, supposedly from the true cross, a knuckle bone of a forgotten saint, yellowed with age or clever staining, a small clay vial allegedly containing dust from a martyr's tomb, a faded scrap of linen said to be a fragment of a saint's robe. Each is placed with care, positioned to catch the light, to invite curiosity. Then the performance begins. You clear your throat, and your voice, surprisingly resonant and compelling, cuts through the ambient noise of the city. Perhaps you start with a snatch of a haunting plain song, a mournful Latin hymn that tugs at the heartstrings of passing pilgrims. Or you might launch into a dramatic, hushed prologue, hinting at miracles witnessed, at divine power held within your humble collection. Your eyes, sharp and observant, scan the gathering faces, identifying the most likely prospects, the wide-eyed, the desperate, the credulous. You see a diverse crowd, sunburnt Frankish knights, their armor glinting, travel-stained pilgrims from distant European lands, their faces etched with hope and weariness, local Syrian Christians, perhaps even a few curious Muslims or Jews observing from a cautious distance. The air is thick with the smells of the city, roasting meat, exotic spices, unwashed bodies, incense drifting from a nearby chapel, and the ever-present dust of the Levant. You feel the warmth of the sun on your face, the press of the crowd as they begin to gather, drawn by your voice, by the promise of something extraordinary. A city guard, his expression bored or suspicious, might saunter over, but a well-placed, deferential nod, perhaps the glint of a pre-prepared small coin, usually ensures he moves along. Your heart beats a little faster with the thrill of the unfolding drama. The bait is cast, you think, a flicker of satisfaction in your chest. As a respectable knot of onlookers forms, your true artistry comes to the fore. You pick up a relic, perhaps the splinter of true cross, holding it aloft, your voice dropping to a conspiratorial, reverent whisper, then soaring with passionate conviction. You weave a tale, a tapestry of vivid imagery, of divine intervention, of suffering and salvation. This splinter, you declare, was personally retrieved from Golgotha by a pious hermit, touched by the very blood of Christ, and has since cured 100 lepers and protected a dozen knights from Saracen blades. Your eyes might mist over, your voice might tremble with feigned emotion. You are a master storyteller, a weaver of dreams, a conduit of hope, or so you make them believe. You watch their faces, their eyes widening, their lips parting in awe. You speak of the knucklebone, how it belonged to Saint Demetrius, how it whispers prophecies to the truly devout in their sleep, how it can ward off the evil eye and ensure safe travels. The vial of dust, you explain, taken from the very spot where St. Catherine was martyred, can soothe fevers and mend broken bones if applied with faith. Each story is a masterpiece of improvisation and carefully curated facts, embellished with dramatic pauses, soulful gazes, and gestures that speak of profound spiritual conviction. You gauge their reactions, tailoring your narrative, your emotional pitch, to their perceived needs and desires. Then comes the delicate art of the sale. These are not mere trinkets, you explain, but sacred objects of immeasurable spiritual worth. However, for a pious donation, a token of their faith, you are willing to part with these treasures to allow others to share in their divine power. You negotiate with a practiced blend of humility and shrewdness, making each buyer feel they are receiving not just a relic, but a personal blessing, a direct line to the divine. You see the hopes, the desperation, the fervent belief in their eyes as they press coins, copper, silver, sometimes even a precious gold piece, into your palm. The cold metal is a satisfying weight. You might offer a special blessing with each transaction, a few mumbled Latin phrases, your eyes closed in feigned piety. The sound of clinking coins is music to your ears, though a fleeting pang of something akin to guilt might prick your conscience as you look into the trusting, hopeful face of a particularly impoverished pilgrim. But you quickly banish it. Survival is a harsh master, you remind yourself. And who is to say their faith, even in this piece of ordinary wood, won't bring them some comfort? You are always vigilant, your eyes constantly scanning for trouble. A skeptical cleric, a disgruntled former customer, a rival relic seller trying to horn in on your crowd, or the ever-present threat of thieves. Suddenly, a commotion at the edge of the crowd. A tall, stern-faced man, in the robes of a high-ranking church official, perhaps a bishop's aide or a member of the Inquisition, pushes his way forward. His eyes, cold and appraising, fix on your display, then on you. By what authority do you peddle these items? He demands, his voice carrying an edge of steel. The crowd murmurs, a ripple of unease spreading. This is the moment you dread, the ultimate test of your cunning. Your heart hammers against your ribs, but outwardly, you strive to maintain an air of calm, pious dignity. You might bow deeply, professing your humble devotion and the unimpeachable provenance of your relics, perhaps even inventing a letter of commendation from a distant, unverifiable monastery. Or, if his gaze is too piercing, his questions too pointed, you might sense that a strategic retreat is the better part of valor. A quick, apologetic murmur, a swift gathering of your wares, and a hasty disappearance into the labyrinthine alleys of the city might be your only salvation. Alternatively, a genuinely sick or crippled individual might be pushed forward by desperate family members, their eyes pleading for a miracle, for the healing touch of your holy artifacts. This is a different kind of challenge, one that tugs at any lingering threads of your conscience. You might perform an elaborate blessing, a theatrical display of faith and compassion, promising that healing is a matter of divine will and fervent prayer, while discreetly pressing a small coin into their hand and urging them to also seek out a skilled physician. It's a delicate balancing act, a constant dance on the razor's edge between profit, performance, and the ever-present risk of exposure. The afternoon sun beats down relentlessly, the initial fervor of the morning crowd beginning to wane. Perhaps the stern faced church official, after a tense exchange where you deployed every ounce of your practiced humility and vague, unverifiable pronouncements, eventually moved on, his suspicions perhaps not entirely allayed, but lacking concrete proof to act upon. Or maybe the desperate pleas of the sick individual and their family were met with your most theatrical display of compassion, a grand, meaningless blessing, a few whispered words of comfort that promised everything and nothing, and a swift, discreet urging to also seek the aid of a physician. Your conscience pricked just enough to offer this sliver of genuine advice alongside your charade. As the shadows lengthen and the bustling energy of the marketplace or the pilgrim filled square begins to subside, you decide it's time to conclude your day's work. You've made a decent haul, your pouch pleasantly heavier, but to linger too long in one spot is to invite unwanted scrutiny or the attention of those with less than pious intentions. With practiced, unobtrusive movements, you begin to carefully pack away your sacred wares, each item returned to its protective wrapping, its mystique preserved for another day, another crowd. You cast a final appraising glance around, noting who is still watching, who might be a potential threat. Discreetly, you slip away from your chosen spot, perhaps melting into the throng of a narrow, winding alleyway. Your first priority is to find sustenance. You might seek out a cheap cookshop tucked away from the main thoroughfares, the air thick with the smell of roasting meat, spices, and wood smoke. Or perhaps you purchase some flatbread, a handful of olives, and a piece of grilled fish from a street vendor, eating quickly, your eyes still watchful, your senses alert. The food, whatever it is a welcome relief after a long day of performance and tension. The taste of warm bread, the salty tang of olives, the rough local wine, these are simple, grounding pleasures in a life built on illusion. With your hunger sated, you make your way back to your modest lodgings. The inn, if that's where you're staying, is likely noisy and crowded as evening approaches, filled with travelers, merchants, and perhaps a few boisterous soldiers. You navigate the common room with a practiced anonymity, avoiding eye contact, drawing as little attention to yourself as possible. Once inside your small, secure chamber, you bolt the door, a small but significant act of creating a temporary sanctuary. The evening offers little in the way of true relaxation. Your mind is still active, replaying the day's encounters, assessing your successes and near misses. You might carefully count your earnings, the cool metal of the coins a tangible reward for your day's deceptions. You separate the various currencies, deniers, bezants, perhaps a few unfamiliar coins from distant lands, stashing them securely in different hidden pouches within your clothing or your meager baggage. This is also the time for personal work. You might examine your existing relics, perhaps adding a touch more age with a bit of grime or a carefully applied stain. Or you might begin crafting new ones from materials procured cheaply in the market, a chicken bone artfully aged, a splinter of common wood imbued with a fabricated history, a small pebble polished to resemble a sacred stone. You might also spend some time mending your travel-worn clothes or oiling your leather satchel. Every action is geared towards survival, towards maintaining the illusion that is your livelihood. You might consider a brief visit to a local tavern, not for revelry, but for information. Taverns are a nexus of gossip, news, and rumors, valuable currency for someone in your precarious profession. You can learn about the movements of important church officials, the arrival of wealthy pilgrim groups, or the activities of rival relic sellers. But even here you are cautious, nursing a single cup of cheap wine, listening more than you speak, your senses on high alert for any sign of danger or opportunity. As for companionship, it is a rare and fleeting commodity. You might have a few nodding acquaintances among the other denizens of the road, fellow peddlers, minstrels, other wanderers living on the fringes of society. But trust is a luxury you can ill afford. These are relationships of convenience, of temporary mutual benefit, easily discarded when circumstances change. Family is a distant memory, or perhaps a concept you've never truly known. Your life is a solitary one, a constant dance of performance and evasion. True night descends, and your small, rented chamber, though secured by a sturdy bolt you've carefully engaged, offers little genuine peace. The sounds of the inn, raucous laughter, drunken singing, the occasional scuffle from the common room below, or the muted noises of a city that never truly sleeps, filter through the thin walls and floorboards, a constant reminder of the precarious world outside your door. The air in the room is stuffy, perhaps still carrying the faint scent of your day's meal or the dust of the road. A profound weariness settles into your bones, not just the physical ache from hours of standing and talking, but the deeper exhaustion of a mind constantly on alert, a spirit perpetually engaged in performance and deception. There's a grim satisfaction, perhaps, as you feel the weight of your hidden coin pouch, a tangible measure of your day's cunning. Yet this small comfort is overshadowed by a persistent, gnawing anxiety. Every creak of the floorboards outside your door, every distant shout, sends a jolt through your nerves. You lie on your thin pallet, the rough blanket pulled up, but sleep is a skittish creature, easily startled. Your mind replays the day's events with an unwelcome clarity. The sea of credulous faces, their eyes wide with hope or fear as they listened to your well rehearsed tales, the smooth, practiced lies that flowed so easily from your tongue, the close calls, the moments when a skeptical gaze lingered a moment too long, or a pointed question threatened to unravel your carefully constructed narrative. You recall the glint of coins, the desperate hope in a pilgrim's eyes as they clutched a worthless piece of bone, believing it to be a fragment of a saint. A familiar litany of anxieties begins its nightly parade. How much longer can you sustain this charade? What happens when your luck runs out, when a truly knowledgeable cleric or a vengeful former customer exposes you? The penalties for fraud, especially when mixed with sacrilege, are severe. Public flogging, branding, perhaps even the pyre, if your deceptions are deemed heretical. Do miracles truly exist? Are there truly saints and holy relics? Or is the entire world, from the highest prelate to the lowliest peasant, caught in a web of belief and deception, with you merely a more conscious player in the game? A flicker of guilt, quickly suppressed, might surface as you remember the genuine faith you exploited, but you rationalize. I offer them hope, don't I? In this harsh world, isn't hope a commodity worth paying for? And I, too, must survive. If there is hope for yourself, it is a pragmatic, unromantic thing. Perhaps you dream of amassing enough coin to buy a small plot of land far from these volatile crusader states, to live out your days in quiet obscurity, the past a carefully buried secret. Or maybe, more realistically, you simply hope for another successful day tomorrow, another crowd to charm, another pouch of coins to secure your continued existence on this perilous frontier. Your body aches, your feet from standing, your throat from hours of projecting your voice, your shoulders from carrying your bag of tricks. The unease in your mind makes true rest elusive. Sleep, when it finally comes, is shallow, fitful, punctuated by sudden starts at any unfamiliar sound. You lie with one ear open, every nerve still on edge, ready to flee at the first sign of danger, a creature of the shadows, even in the supposed sanctuary of your locked room.